As the smallest state in the US, Rhode Island has a history of doing things its own way, but also of having events there disproportionately affect the rest of the country. But how did it come to
And how
exist
did
as
it come
such a small
to
unit in
exist
the
in
first
such a
place? To find
first
out,
place?
join me for this brief
Financially,
look at the history and politics of Rhode Island. People have been living in what is now Rhode Island for thousands of years. One of the
well, for this I want to discover some vocabulary that I don't know.
earliest archaeological sites in the state, the Jamestown Archaeological District, places human occupation of roughly 3,000 years ago. In more recent times, we know that the future state was inhabited by three distinct peoples, the Wampanoag, Narragansett, and Neantic. All three spoke a variation of Algonquian, lived in extended family groups, and did not build permanent settlements as they relocated with the seasons, moving inland during the colder months. They lived in wigwams and ate beans, corn, and squash, as well as fishing and
Squash. Squash. Specifically the noun
Squash.
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 Squash. And the formal a drink made with a fruit juice, sugar and water. And the squash. And the C2 squash corn. Leave until the Mars and eat beans, corn and squash as well as finished. Squash. That it's more, according to this, is more British. Drink made by juice, sugar and water.
hunting wild game, and used wampom, a traditional shell bead, as a means of exchange. Of the three, the
Wampom. Wampom.
a traditional shell bead, as a means of exchange.
Shellbead. Shellbead.
Of the three, the most powerful in what would become Rhode Island were the Narragansett, a tribe that received tribute from the other two, and whose name is believed to translate to the people of the little points and bays. As it happens, they were also the first individuals to encounter Europeans. This happened when Giovanni da Verrazzano, a Florentine navigator sailing under the flag of France, came across Narragansett Bay in April 1524 and made
Came come across. Come across to be understood, to take a particular impression, meet or find somebody or something by chance. Maybe this is the more appropriate for this. Provide or supply something when you need it.
contact with them. He described the natives in a letter to the French king as the most beautiful people with long black hair, bronze color, and larger size than us. He also wrote that one of the islands in the bay
Bronze. Dark red brown, metal made by copper, chemistry, dark work like bronze, dark work made by bronze, bronze as an adjective,
Bronze.
bronze, bronze skin, dark red-brown in color. Bronze skin. Okay. Bronze skin.
Was in size like the island of Rhodes, full of hills and covered with trees. The allusion to Rhodes, however,
Full of hills. Area of the land that it's higher than the land around it, but it's not as high as a mountain. Lands with the hills. As the hills, a hill of beans. A hill of beans over the hill, and therefore no longer useful or attractive over the hill. Youngsters seems to think you are over the hill at 40.
however, was not the basis for the future state's name. Rather, it probably came from the next recorded European visitor, Adrian Block, a Dutch navigator who explored and mapped the bay in 1614, and who called the largest of its isles Rodhe Island, Dutch for Red Island. Whether this was because of the color of the clay on its shore or its foliage is unclear. Roughly 6 years later,
Shore.
Shore. Shore.
Shore. Shore. The land along the edge of the sea, the ocean, or the lake. On the shores of something. A shore area that is by the sea or the ocean, especially one where people go for a day or a holiday. So go to the shore. We spend our vacation on the shore. An area that is by the sea or ocean, especially one where people go for a day.
the brick clay on its shore or its foliage is unclear.
Foliage.
Foliage. Foliage.
Well, level is C2. Foliage. The leaves of the tree or plant's leaves and branches together, dense green foliage.
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 Roughly 6 years later, the British would first settle in Plymouth, some 50 miles from the modern Rhode Island. Roughly 6 years later, the British would first settle in Plymouth.
Settle in. Well, first settle in. Start to feel comfortable in a new home or job. You'll soon settle into a routine, but it's just in. It's not always easy for a new player to settle in.
Some 50 miles from the modern Rhode Island state line, and continue expanding their footprint throughout what is now Massachusetts. Two of those colonists, Stephen Hopkins and Edward Winslow, first explored the region around what is now the town of Warren in July 1621. And because of the great relationship they had with Chief Massasoit, the Sachem, or chief, of the Wampanoag Confederacy who controlled the area, were able to set up a trading post in 1632. Another one of those original British colonists, William Blackstone, the first European to settle in Boston, was also the first European person to make the modern Rhode Island territory his home. Blackstone did so largely because although he had negotiated for himself a nice land grant in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, he, being an Anglican, did not get along with his Puritan leaders, and
Anglican. Anglican.
Anglican, member of Church of England, or a church connected with another country. Anglican, it's kind of suitable. Church are the Church of England, Church of Wales, and the Scottish Episcopal Church, and the Church of Ireland. The Anglican Communion is represented by the Episcopal Church. Many people in Britain call themselves Anglican, even if they've never got to the church.
thus opted to move further west in 1635.
Thus.
Did not get along with its Puritan leaders, and thus opted to move further west in 1635. Not get along with its Puritan leaders, and thus opted to move further west.
And thus.
Thus.
And thus. It's tricky. You can hear it clearly when you are in a listening part of the test. Thus. Upon writing. As an example, here's a connection like this. The university have expanded, thus allowing many more people that change of higher education. Like this. She rarely gave interviews, and thus avoided being asked questions she would rather not answer.